I'm Action.
And I'm Set. And this is our Strasburg Railroad Memories video. We didn't go to Strasburg in 2017, so there really was no reason for a memories video last year. And seeing how this week is Strasburg filled with the Norfolk and Western 475 and Strasburg 90s Director's Cut, why don't we talk about the past 2 years at the Strasburg Railroad? And we'll quickly start off by saying, kind of like the Union Pacific 844 and the Western Maryland 734, the Strasburg Railroad was actually in my childhood via a few programs I watched and videotapes. The first locomotive I was introduced from Strasburg was the Strasburg 90, which was in the video all about fast-moving trains, which also featured the Western Maryland 734. And the last thing I saw Thomas the Tank Engine-wise as a kid, Thomas and the Magic Railroad, the Norfolk and Western 475, the only operational 480 in the United States, played the last Rainbow Sun. So with that being said, Strasburg was in a few programs I watched as a kid a little bit, obviously not as much as the 844. And in 2016, I'm sure Zach can attest to you, we were looking for places to go to for our first major road trip with Going Roll.
Yeah, that one came up and I'd never really heard of it at that time.
And initially, we had ideas all over the place, like said in the year anniversary video back in 2017. Initially, we thought about going to the Illinois Railway Museum in Union when we found out the steam only operated on the weekend. So, we decided upon this insane idea. I'm sure his action can say.
And it was insane.
Of leaving at 2 a.m. in the morning to drive to Strasburg to see the Strasburg Railroad and, of course, the Pennsylvania Railroad Museum. And, well, yeah, that was a fun, interesting
That was an interesting day. Not going to get too into the driving, because that was
a mess.
That's putting it lightly. Especially
driving westbound.
But Strasburg was actually my first railway museum that I'd ever been to. Yeah, I didn't really have the background that Sets had with Strasburg.
It was the first, well, it's two different entities. There's the Pennsylvania Railroad Museum, the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania, and the Strasburg Railroad, and they're both literally right across the street from one another, and 2 stars from the Pennsylvania Railroad Museum operated on the Strasburg Railroad for a long time. But it was the first railroad museum I had been back to at that point in 20 years, actually. It was exactly 20 years at that point since I had been to Tennessee Valley. And
oh, wow.
I never went to, well, I take that back. We did go to the Conneaut Railroad Museum, but that was nothing like the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania. Oh, the Conneaut was cool.
It was, but Strasburg was way cooler.
Yes, it was. As the name implies, it has a lot of Pennsylvania Railroad equipment.
I thought it was like strictly Pennsylvania railroad equipment.
Except, you know, I think it more or less grew to railroads in Pennsylvania because you do have a Reading engine in there. It was a tank engine. You had a few Amtrak locomotives. And of course, you had the Nickel Plate Road 757, which is going back to Bellevue, Ohio.
Yes.
Sometime in the future, which will be cool. But the museum, it was just amazing, just all the different time period locomotives they had, because I mean, they didn't have one of every Pennsylvania Railroad locomotive class because not one of every class exists, but you had the sister ship to the 1361, which pulled President Hoover's funeral train, I believe it was. Yeah, it had something to do with him. I don't remember the specifics. It also had electric locomotives and had a few diesel locomotives, and it even had one in the Conrail paint scheme, which got me happy because I missed the Conrail paint scheme. So after the Railroad Museum that day, the real reason that brought us to the Strasburg area was the railroad across the street, which had at the time 2 operational steam locomotives, and from 2017 to last year, before 475 went out, had 3 operational steam locomotives. But I have a feeling we'll be seeing the 475 again. As seen in one of the Facebook groups I belong to, I guess they're planning on getting the locomotive up and running this year because they need it for its size. But the Strasburg Railroad, which is the oldest continuous short line in America, and, well, was the first, believe it or not, has the notation also of being the first railroad to restore steam locomotive post the age of steam with the 31 ex-Canadian National 7312. But the day that we were there, the 90 was operating, and the 90 was the locomotive, as I stated earlier, was all about fast-moving trains as a kid.
At that time, I hadn't really seen hardly any steam locomotives up close, or at least functioning. So this was actually kind of a first for me, seeing an actual steam locomotive operating. It was pretty cool.
And it's ironic I mentioned the fact that we were initially planning to go see the 1630 because the 90 and the 1630 are both decapods, 210Os. One thing I'd like to point out about the 90, I don't care what photo you show me of the 90, all I think about is that bell. And the train ride that day was really quick.
It seemed like it was more geared for little kids and families, but that was still neat.
Yeah, they operate in the summertime. I know they operate trains from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. I believe. We were just lucky enough that the 90 pulled our train that day, and it was a nice train ride and relaxing, because after that would take forever to drive to the Midwest. But the 90 was pretty cool. We got a departing shot of it. At that point, that was pretty much my interest in the Strasburg Railroad. I always said I wanted to return.
Well, you did eventually.
I did eventually. It was actually after that I had learned that the 475 was the last Rainbow Sun. A little bit of history here. 475, I didn't know was in Thomas and the Magic Railroad until reading about it. I think it was at the railroad, or it was later on, because in the movie, the 475 was in what I call its Pennsylvania Railroad locomotive appearance instead of its original Norfolk and Western appearance. So that sparked a little bit of interest going back, because I wanted to see it under steam, and because of just how massive it looked. You know, it wasn't 1225 sized, but it was a massive locomotive. And then in 2017, a notice went up about the Norfolk and Western Historical Society's annual meeting being at the Strasburg Railroad. And in this ad, it posted that the 475 would be going down at the end of the year due to the 1472 day inspection, and immediately it was back in my interest. However, I did not actually make the trek down to Strasburg. The day I was supposed to go, I decided not to go. I didn't get a hotel room or anything like that. I just decided to stay home. So 2017 ended. I thought my chance to see the 475 was over for a while. And then one of our Instagram followers actually posted a picture that the 475 would be operating on the Easter trains. I thought after the Laro production photo charter, the 475 was out for a while. Well, lucky me, decided I wanted to see the 475 before it went out completely. And after this interest of wanting to go see it, the 90 pretty much operated all the weekend trains until July with the 89, with the exception of one weekend. Yeah, just my luck, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd already seen the 90 once, not that I didn't want to see the 90 again. 89, this might sound a little surprising. Canadian locomotives are cool because steam is steam, but I'm actually not a huge fan of the look of them. Don't like the running number boards up so, or flying number boards, whatever you want to call them, up so high. So when I heard about the Red Ball Express, I thought, after seeing the pictures for it, I saw nothing but 475. I thought, wow, this was finally my chance to see the 475. I'd gotten advance notice, though, that the two planned engines were 90 and 89 unless something went wrong. But I was hoping somehow something would arise that the 475 would be the locomotive on either the hourly or the charter, and my luck was not with me again, as the 90 and the 89 both ran that weekend. But I would be lying if I said that I didn't enjoy my time with the 90 and the 89. So to kick off the whole Red Ball Express trilogy, I actually went back to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania. I did want to go back and see what had changed, because since we had been there in 2016, they had moved the Nickel Plate Road 757, which I did not see before its move back to Bellevue. And they restored the Charles Lindenberg engine, which unfortunately the number escapes me at the time, but there's the locomotive on the screen. Really, just minor things had changed, in my personal opinion, and it was cool to go back. I would love to go back to the museum and actually spend quite a bit of time there, but that'll be for another time. Chasing the 90 that day, I got quite a few different shots, and I also decided to mix it up and chase the 89 too, as it was on the half-hourly trains. But I really wanted to see, again, the 475. And the charter was great. It was another great Laro Productions charter. But when I went home that weekend, you know, it was obviously in my mind to see 475 again. I don't think I can stop emphasizing that. So, going forward, I kept looking at seeing that the 90 and 89 kept operating, like I said, until July. July finally came, and I got word from that Instagram follower that the 475 was going to be operating for the week while 89 had its 31-day inspection, or I think 90 had its 31-day inspection. The diesel was broken down, and the 475 would be needed to pull the freight train as the diesel was not yet repaired. And I thought, this is my chance. So hearing word that the 475 was going to actually be running that weekend because the 89 would be going down for its 31-day inspection. Serious, I ventured out to Strasburg again, and while the 90 was on the hourly trains that day, and as much as I hate to say it, the 90 stole the show that day, I finally got to see the 475. And in person, 475 is awkward looking when you look at it from a side profile in the cab. The firebox literally goes to the back of the cab. The crew really has not much room to maneuver around in there. But it was a great day with both locomotives. I finally got to see the 475, so I was great. I was glad with that. I also got some really cool shots of the 90, which I did not get the trip beforehand. And, well, is Strasburg in our sights this year? 475 comes back, I will say yes. Because I don't know how long the 1472 day is going to take on it. I was expecting a year or two, but I know the shop is expecting it to be some point this year. So 475 is back this year. We'll definitely be back down at Strasburg at some point. If not, well, there's always next year or the year after or the year after that. Anyhow, that was our Strasburg memories video.
Hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, I'm Action.
I'm Set.